Welcome to Grow and Go with me, Tyler. This is for the ones who keep showing up again and again, hungry for more of God, but weary of striving. If you've ever felt stuck, worn out, or unsure of how to move forward in faith, you're in the right place. Here we grow, not by our own effort, but by leaning into what God has already done, and we go, not in exhaustion, but in the freedom He gives. Sometimes I'll be sitting down with guests to learn from their journeys. Other times it will be just you and me, diving into scripture, unpacking messages I've shared, or wrestling through what it means to walk this out in real life. Wherever you are, on a walk, in the car, folding the laundry, take a breath, settle in, and let's grow and go together. Joining me on the podcast today is Scott Maderer. He and his wife, Carrie, are the founders of Inspired Stewardship, where they help Christian men and couples align their time, talent, and treasures to live their God-given calling. They're both certified human behavior consultants and John Maxwell team members, and they offer coaching, speaking, workshops, all rooted in deep understanding and purpose. Last year in 2024, at the time of recording, Scott's book, Inspired Living, Assemble the Puzzle of Your Calling by Mastering Your Time, Your Talent, and Your Treasures, was published. And so it's a delight to welcome Scott.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a delight to welcome you, Scott, to the podcast today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So,
and by the way, I love your sign, sow the seed, feed the chickens, so that we have chickens for the first time. So I'm like, I saw that sign and I'm like, oh, that's cute. I got to buy one of those.
Oh, well, I actually printed it. Funny you should say that. I actually printed it because a random person that I don't know had a picture in a prayer meeting at my mum's church, which is like an hour away from where I am, and said to my mum, I've had a picture for your daughter. And she said, okay. And in it, I was standing in a valley throwing out seed, and all these chickens were coming over the hill from far away. And one of my kids has a bit of an obsession with chickens. We don't have chickens, but he loves chickens. We're always sending like chicken memes, and like if we see a cool chicken picture, we'll send it to each other. And so anyway,
so it turns out the chicken touched.
Yeah, it turns out. So the intention is that I think we're kind of going to get onto this with our conversation a little bit today. My job is to not make chickens come to me per se. My job is to be faithful with the seed that God has given me,
right, and
to throw that out, and He will bring the chickens.
And the chickens show up. Yeah,
the chickens will come. Random, but brilliant. Scott, give us a little picture. Like, where in the world are you? What does day-to-day life look like? Tell us a little bit more so we can get to know you.
Sure. So, well, speaking of chickens, so we actually have recently moved. So we used to live in South Texas, down close to San Antonio. We lived out in the middle of nowhere. And so back then, when I say in the middle of nowhere, we were over an hour's drive to the closest grocery store. So
wow.
We lived,
I would not like that.
over an hour from Walmart, McDonald's, Starbucks, whatever you wanted. We were in the middle of nowhere. We did that for 25 years. We loved it. But we've recently moved up to Central Texas. So we're in the Bryan-College Station area, which is kind of in the middle of the triangle. If you know Dallas and Houston and Austin, we're kind of in the middle of that triangle between them.
Okay.
So kind of close to all of those bigger towns too. We're within a few hours of all of those, which in Texas speak, a couple of hours is right next door.
It's nothing, yeah.
As far as my life, my wife and I are now empty nesters. We have an adult son. He lives up in Dallas, works up there. He successfully left the house. Yay. That's a parenting win when you get to check that one off. It's like,
when they fly and they're free and they're doing well for themselves.
And he hasn't come back yet. So, he might eventually, but not yet. They do come back. He comes and visits, but he hasn't come back to live. So as far as my day, I work from home. I now run my own coaching business. So my commute is to go get coffee in the morning and then go out and feed. The house that we bought, one of the conditions to buying it was we can't move our chickens. Will you keep our chickens? And so we have 3 backyard chickens that we inherited with the house.
That's so cool.
But I love my girls. I go out there and feed them every morning, and they get all excited to see me come in, and all of that. It's fun to have them. And then of course, normal living in a house stuff, taking care of things and all of that. But as far as the work goes, I usually am in the office by 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and kind of doing my morning routine, spending some time in prayer, spending some time in getting ready for the day and those sorts of things, and checking through messages and all of that. And then I'll usually have either podcast recording that I'm doing, going
Yep.
on a show, having people come on my show, or I'm meeting with clients. And I meet with clients all around the world. So I that could be any time of the day.
Yeah.
I'll meet with a client, like I have one client in Japan. I meet with him at a little later than I like to meet, but it's also a little earlier than he likes to meet. So we kind of figured it. It's like, well, that's the best for both of us. So
It's so
we'll find a
hard,
way
isn't
that
it?
works.
Yeah.
You
When
know?
we were living in New Zealand, we were literally like the other end of the day for people in the UK, and
Right.
that mostly worked. But if ever you wanted to speak to somebody in America and England and New Zealand at the same time, that was
Forget
a
it.
challenge.
Yeah.
Could just
Yeah, I
about
used
do
to
it, but somebody would have to either be up really late or really early. Yeah.
I used to work a corporate job where we had people in, time zones literally all over the world,
Mm.
and contracts all over the world. And occasionally it's like, okay, well, we need to meet with our client and so, so you're going to be here till 10 o'clock tonight, so that you can meet with them.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you just rearrange your day and make it work. But it's not
I love
fun,
that.
but you can make it work.
Yeah, that's so good. Speaking of time, I would love to tap into your wisdom and your coaching expertise. Something that I find myself saying often, and definitely have a lot of conversations with friends, is around not having enough time. Like the day getting away from you, all the things going on, particularly here in the UK. We're a bit behind the States in the sense that our kids are still in school, but they're gearing up for that end of school run when there's
Mhm.
millions of extra things to attend, or there's work commitments where you're trying to squeeze everything in before people go on holiday. How do we manage our time in a God honoring way and still get stuff done?
Mhm.
Help us out.
So the first thing, I'm going to give you a couple of kind of hard truths. So the first one is you cannot manage time.
Oh,
Okay, time
sorry,
just
ladies and
exists.
gents. Yep. Yep.
You get up in the morning, you've got a certain number of hours, you got a certain number of minutes, you got a certain number of seconds, you go to bed at night. That's it. That's the
Yep.
time just happens. And it's going to happen whether you do anything, whether you do nothing, no matter what, the time's going to pass, and you're going to fill it with something. Even if that something is sitting on the couch, eating bananas. I don't care. You're filling it with something. And so instead of thinking about managing time, you actually have to think about managing yourself,
Ugh,
which is a much
nobody
harder
wants to do that,
prospect.
Scott. That's
Exactly.
not the answer we wanted.
It's because there is no magic app. There is no tool. There is no technique. I mean, yes, there are a lot of tools you can use to bring awareness to your time and what you're
Yeah, I like that.
doing. And that's important. But it's important so that you can become informed and make better decisions. So I'll give you a real quick one. This is something you can put into action like this second. And you just said it. You said you and a lot of your friends, and you hear people say, I don't have time to fill in the blank. Okay,
Yeah.
here's the change. You're no longer allowed to say, I don't have time. You remove that from your vocabulary. You cannot say, I don't have time for that. Okay, you literally just have to remove that phrase from your language and instead replace it with, that's not a priority for me.
Oh,
And
okay.
here's why you say that. It will make you make different decisions. Imagine for a minute, you're sitting at work, you're in your cubicle, you're working away, and your friend looks at you from the cubicle next door, your coworker, and says, hey, don't you need to leave? Is it your daughter's soccer game tonight? And you say, oh, I just don't have time to make it to the game. Your friend's going to sympathize with you. Your friend's going to look at you and go, oh, I understand. We're so busy. You don't get, you just don't have time. But if instead you looked at your friend and you say, it's not a priority to make it to my daughter's soccer game tonight, your friend's going to smack you upside the head.
They're going to be like, wow, that's bold, but okay. Wowzers. Yeah.
They're not going to accept that. They're going to look at you. And what's more, if you say that out loud to someone, you're going to hear yourself say it and go, ooh, that feels
Is
icky.
that true? Yeah. Is that a
But
true thing?
that's really what you're doing. When you say, I don't have time for that, what you're actually saying is that's not important. That's not a priority. That's not something that I should make time to have happen. And so all of a sudden, that laundry that, is kind of pressing on you that you need to get done, that, oh, I have to spend 3 hours getting the laundry done, instead of going to my daughter's soccer game, you're like, well, the
Mm.
laundry can wait till tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's okay that the laundry waits. And otherwise, a lot of times we mismatch, we flip that priority. We see the thing that's urgent, that's right there in front of
Mm.
us. The phone ringing is urgent. And so we answer the phone. You know what? If you're in a deep conversation with your kid right that minute about the rest of their life, let the phone go to voicemail. Don't pick up the
Yeah.
phone just because it's making noise. It's not more important.
Oh, I just know that this is going to be such a life-giving conversation for so many. Okay, here's the follow-up question from that. I'm currently trying to channel all my friends who would absolutely be in this boat right now. How then? How then do we determine what actually is a priority? Because we can't have 15 priorities.
Nope, you
And
can only have
and
one.
if we're coming at it feeling like all these things are really important, and I have these responsibilities to these different tasks or people or jobs or whatever it might be, how do we discern what takes priority over the other things?
So there's a lot of different things that you can look at it with, but let's step back for a moment and talk about that. I said you can only have one priority. The word priority, singular, we
Mm,
make it plural. In the
mm-hmm,
Western world today, we say we have priorities. Here's the interesting
mm.
thing. That word cannot actually be plural. We didn't actually make that word
Oh,
plural until the 1900s. Okay.
I
Why?
know.
Well, because priority means the one thing that comes before all others. Well, stop and think for a minute. How can you have more than one thing?
Yeah.
It's like that. You can't have more than one. So
Mm,
first off, there is a moment of putting a hierarchy together. It is some introspection to stop and think, wait, if I could only do one thing today, what's the one thing? What
yeah.
is the thing that is the most important? And
Mm,
I'll give you a hint. A lot of times it's not work.
yeah.
A lot of times it's that conversation with the spouse, or it's that moment with your kid, or it's those things. And
Mm,
that's okay, by the way. Or it's that moment in quiet in the morning, because that's another thing. We sacrifice time with the Lord, we sacrifice
yeah.
time in quiet, we sacrifice time in introspection. We fill it with all of this other stuff. And so it's like you fill your life with noise and then you wonder why you can't hear anything. It's
Mm,
like, well,
yeah.
because your life is full. And so
Yeah.
it is creating that space and that quiet time to be introspective and go, wait, no, what is the most important thing today? It is about putting down some boundaries and some plans. And then it's about using probably the hardest word to learn in the English language. It's got two letters.
Yeah. It begins with an N.
It begins with an N and it ends with an O.
Yep.
It's really hard to say that. And yet, you know
Yeah.
what? There are some things that you just should say no to. And
Mm,
so rather than fill your time with the stuff that's busy, flip it around and say yes to the stuff that's the most important. And let some of
mm,
that other stuff just go by the wayside. It's okay to
mm,
defer it and put it off till later. It's okay to dump it and just say, no, I'm not going to do it. It's okay to delegate it or automate it or, get rid of it in another way. But at the end of the day, with time, with things that come onto our plate, we really only have four choices. We can do them, we can dump them, we can defer them, and we can delegate them. And that's it. There
mm,
is nothing else you can do with
mm.
it. And so you really have to stop and think, for this thing, is it something I need to be saying yes to? Or is it
Mm,
something I need to say no to? And what's interesting is if you say yes to the most important stuff first, then when you get to the stuff that you're saying no to, it doesn't feel as bad, because you're
mm.
like, I've already put the most important, I put the big rocks in the jar. I've already
Yeah.
filled my life with the most important stuff. It's okay to say no to some of this other stuff.
Yeah.
We wear busy as a badge of honor, and all busy means is doing something. it doesn't
Mhm.
actually mean that you're making a difference. And
It's not necessarily
so I hate the
productivity.
busy
Yeah.
culture. I hate it.
That's so good. Yeah. Some of the things that like just pop into mind as you're sharing there, first of all, is Jesus hanging out with Mary
Mhm.
and Martha. It's the classic story.
It is.
Martha's running around like a crazy chicken. It's chickens again for you. This is a chicken heavy episode, people. And Mary is sat at Jesus's feet, and he says she has chosen the one thing needed. The one
Mhm.
thing needed. Now, that's not to say that the things that Martha was doing aren't important and that they don't
No.
need to happen at some point, but it's that posture out of which we're doing stuff. And like you were saying, we often sacrifice spending time with Jesus, because if we start with him, and this is another little, it's not a pet peeve so much as more just like one day I kind of had a light bulb moment and went, huh. I love that illustration about putting the big rocks in the jar first and then
Mhm.
the smaller things, and then you can put the pebbles and the sand can fit and it'll all go in your jar and it'll be very pretty. But I think oftentimes as Christians, we make the mistake of thinking that God is a rock to put in our jar. He
Mhm.
is not something,
He's the
our
jar.
faith and our walk with him. Exactly. He's the one sustaining things and holding it all together. He's holding our lives together. So he can't become something that we tick off a list, that
Right.
he's like another to do in our day. Our
Right.
relationship with him should permeate everything. It should be the thing that tries all these things together. And if you're in a moment of trying to decide between those four, what is it, D's, do it, defer it, delegate it,
Dump it
or
or
dump
delegate
it.
it.
I love that. That's
Mhm.
great. If it's between those, then you can ask the Holy Spirit in that moment,
Mhm.
which one is this? Help me out here. And he definitely will. He definitely
Yeah.
will help if we give him that space to speak into it.
Especially if you open up the space to listen, because I do
Mm,
think even when we let God permeate our life, another additional thing that I think sometimes we do is we allow God to permeate our life, but we allow it to permeate our life in an intercession way. And again, it's not
mhm.
that asking God to do something for you is bad. That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes we just need to shut up and listen, you
It's the
know?
busyness thing again, isn't it? It's
You know,
being so busy we don't have time
we
to
don't
hear the
have time to
response.
hear. And
Mm.
and then and then, so it's, I the number of times that I do this, right? I'll ask God for help. God, help me make this decision. I really need you to help me make this decision. Oh, I'm trying, let me go do some more research on the decision. And it's like, you ask the question, stop and listen for the answer,
I love that. That is
You know?
that is just me through and through. Like my whole life has been like, I need to figure this thing out. So I'm going to research and I'm going to do more and more and more and more. And the number of times I am slowly learning to actually slow down enough to listen to God.
Yeah.
But
It's
it's
hard. It's hard
it
to
is,
do.
yeah, it's countercultural. It's countercultural because oftentimes as well in this busy culture where busyness is rewarded and productivity is king, we also see that the slowing down is somehow failing,
Right.
and so it's like that internal battle all the time to go against what is cultural and the narratives and the messages that we're hearing there, and to
Right.
lean into the one who says, like he's got a pace of grace to walk with. His burden is light and easy. He says, come away with me to a secret place where you can rest. Like, these are all, he's constantly inviting us to slow down and to withdraw and to listen, and
To be.
Jesus modeled it exactly, to be.
Mhm.
He went to be with the Father, and also he was a big advocate for naps.
Yeah, I'm
He
like, do
took
what
a lot of
Jesus did, take it
naps.
out.
Absolutely. Like the storm is crazy, just have a nap, and when you wake up you'll know what to do. It'll be
The
fine.
number of times that the advice in the Bible is basically go have a snack and lay down and take a nap. And it's like,
Yeah,
actually, that's pretty good advice for a
that's
lot of
good
things.
advice. Yeah, a lot of us are
I
just
think a
sleep
lot of times
deprived.
what it is as Christians is we confuse two words. So the word in the Bible that is used a lot is contentment. And
Hmm.
we confuse contentment with what in kind of the worldly world they say, oh, contentment is the same as complacency. And they're not actually equivalent.
Mm,
Contentment is to be satisfied with what you have and where you're at, to be
yeah.
to be joyful in the moment. it doesn't mean that you don't want the moment to change. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you might not want more success or a different job or, growth or kids or a marriage or whatever. You can still be driven to have goals and want something. That's okay. But also be content with where you are today. Don't lose the joy of the moment,
Mm.
because if we lose the joy of the moment, then all of a sudden, guess what? No matter what you get, you're never going to find joy. You're
Yeah.
always going to be chasing it because
Yeah.
it never arrives. So you've got to learn to find it, what Paul, right? When I have much, I find contentment in the gospel. When I have little, I find contentment in the gospel. I'm happy with where I'm at no matter what. And he wrote that line while he was in prison. So, I
Yeah.
kind of think he's speaking speaking from experience in that
Yeah.
moment. And yet we think of contentment as being complacent, which complacent is when you're in something and you stay there. You're wallowing in it. It's
Yeah.
kind of the victim think. It's the,
Mm.
woe is me, nothing ever works for me, everything's bad. Well, guess what? If you're complacent, you're right. You're never going to achieve joy either, for a different reason. But
Mm.
both of those are not really the route to find contentment and find joy. One is, always chasing the next thing, and
Yeah.
you never catch it. And the other is wallow where you're at in the victim thinking, and that's not a path to joy. So that third path of learning to be content when I have lots and content when I have little, but still be, it's okay to be goal oriented. It's okay to have ideas, but again, have those ideas, make sure that you're spending the time to figure out your priority and put the right things as the goals, because
Yeah.
I think too often we put the goal as the thing that we you don't really want. I'll talk to
Right.
people. It's like, oh, my goal is to make more money, or my goal is to do this. And it's like, well, why do you want more money? And then they'll talk about being a provider for their family, or they'll talk about being able to take trips and experiences, or they'll talk about freedom or flexibility. It's like, oh, so it's not actually money you want. It's freedom, or it's
Yes.
flexibility, or it's the ability to have experiences. Is there a way we could figure out a way to do some of that now?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, yeah, there is. And all of a sudden it's
Mm.
like, now you can find the joy in the thing that you really want. And it doesn't mean that you might not get a better job and make more money. That's not the point. It's just,
Yeah.
you can still find a way to experience that joy where you're at while you're growing and living and developing and all of those other things are happening.
Yeah. If someone is listening and they're saying, okay, Scott, I like what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I am not currently content in my situation. And I'm not sure what the underlying thing is that I'm after that's like keeping me from that. What are some questions that they could ask themselves to maybe do their little bit of that digging and go, okay, well, let's figure this out so that then I can, maybe hand it over to Jesus and say, well, help me figure out,
Mhm.
can I do this thing right now? Is it a right motive in the first place anyway? All that sort of stuff. But if they're saying, okay, I hear you, I would like to be content, I know that I'm not, what's the next step?
So again, there's a ton of questions. So one option is literally the question why. You just heard me ask it a minute ago, but I'll give you some other questions to give some framework to that, because for most of us, why doesn't work. But there is an
Mm.
exercise called the 5 whys, which is
Okay.
literally, you ask somebody, why do you want, what do you want? I want a better job. My job sucks. Okay. Why do you want a better job? And then they answer, okay, why that answer?
Hmm.
Why that, and you ask 5 whys. Okay. Because
Yeah.
typically for most of us, the surface level answer is not actually the answer.
No,
It's
this is
3 or
maybe
4
the thing we've
layers
been
deep.
conditioned to kind
Yeah.
of give as the answer. Yeah.
It's the answer that we think we're supposed to say. It's not really the real answer. And then if you keep digging a lot of time, and it's hard, by the way, this is one of those things where it is actually, find a dear friend, find a spouse, find somebody to ask you those questions. And they kind of have to turn into a toddler, and it can kind of be annoying. So
Yeah. Why?
prepare
Why?
yourself for it. Why,
Yeah.
why? It's like, shut up. If you have toddlers around, you might want to skip this one. But
You could
I'll
just
give
get
you
them to ask you the question.
yeah, it's like, or hire your toddler to do it, because they'll do
Yeah.
it naturally. But it really is true that we've got to get several layers deep. So here's another question you can ask yourself. Ask yourself, what does wealth mean to me? or what does it mean to be rich? Okay.
Mm.
And here's what's interesting. I've asked that question of thousands of people now, and very few people write down a number.
Yeah.
Almost
Okay.
nobody writes down, oh, to have $1 million in the bank. Instead, what do they write down? They write down things about family, and they write down things about relationship, and they write things about their spiritual walk, and they write things about time, and they write things about, that's what they talk about. And they
Mm.
write things down about what is it that I really want? Because
Mm.
most of us, when we talk about being rich or being wealthy or having what we want, we don't go to money. We go to deeper things. And that's important because that is that realization of that's what you're actually chasing. And part of the problem with finding contentment is when you're chasing the wrong thing, you're never going to find contentment,
Yeah.
because you're putting the wrong thing first. And so at the end of the day, you look up and you're like, well, I caught it. It's kind of like the dog chasing the car that catches the car. Like, now what do I do with it?
Mm.
You catch it. You're like, this wasn't what I thought I was chasing.
Yeah.
You climb the wrong ladder because when you get to the top, you look around and you're like, this isn't where I wanted to go. What am I doing?
Yeah.
It's
And,
like
and,
that
and again, we all
quote
do it.
from Yeah, it's
Go
like
ahead.
that quote from Jim Carrey, I think it is, where he says, I wish that everybody had fame and money and like all the things that people think that they want. And he goes on to say, so that they can realize that that's not it.
That's
That's
not what
not
they're
the
after.
answer. That's
No.
not that's not where the contentment lies.
The
Mm.
other question that you can ask yourself, or the other kind of exercise you can do, and I do this when I'm helping people find their calling. I kind of have a two-part exercise. I'm going to give you the second part. I share the first part if you want me to in a minute. But the first part is looking backwards. The second part is looking forwards. The looking
Okay.
forwards one is a good question or to ask when you're talking about what you're talking about. So back when I was in the corporate world, I was always on an airport. I was always on an airplane. I was always in a hotel room. So I set this in an airport kind of in honor of that time of my life. So you know how you sometimes go on a trip and you go to a place, and then when you're flying home, you've got to stop at an airport in the middle and then fly the
Hmm.
rest of the way home. You got to change
Yep.
planes, right? You got the connection. So I think most of us have done that or kind of know what that is. So imagine it's 5 years from today. It's 5 years in the future. You've been on this trip, vacation, work, doesn't matter. You're flying home. You get to that middle airport. And as you're
Hmm.
walking up to the gate where you're going to catch your connecting flight, you look up and you see those dreaded words, flight delayed. Turns out that your flight has been delayed by 4 hours. So you're now
Hmm.
stuck in an airport in the middle of nowhere. Remember, this isn't the airport where you left from. This isn't the airport at home. This is the airport in the middle. You're stuck there for 4 hours. So you do what anyone does when they're stuck in an airport. You either go find a bar or a restaurant, depending on your particular poison, and find a place to sit and have a drink or have a bite to eat. So I'm going to pick a restaurant. And so you go down to a restaurant, and as you're walking in, all of a sudden from across the restaurant, somebody yells out, "Hey, how you doing? I haven't." It turns out it's a friend of yours that you kind of lost track of. You haven't talked to him for 4 or 5 years. Here it is, 5 years in the future. They see you. They're like, "It's so great. Are you here for long?" And you're like, "Well, I wasn't going to be, but now I am. I got a 4 hour layover." They're like, "Well, I'm here for a couple of hours. Let's go grab a table and catch up." So you grab a table in the side of the room, and your friend looks across the table at you and goes, "Man, it is great to see you. I haven't seen you for 5 years. How have the last 5 years been treating you?" And you look at your friend and you say, "You know what? This has been the best 5 years of my life because."
Hmm.
That's the question. Your job is to write what comes after because. What
Hmm.
about your spiritual walk? What about your career? What about your finances? What about your relationships? What about all of those components of your life would you have to say? What would have to be true for you to look at a friend that you haven't talked to for 5 years and say, "Man, these last 5 years have been the best 5 years of my life"?
Hmm.
Because if you can articulate that, that's the stuff that you're after. That's
Yeah.
the stuff. And by the way, it's going to change. Let me tell you this. If you do this exercise and you go 5 years into the future and you look at where you're at and you project another 5 years, it's going to be a different thing. And that's okay. It's not that you're coming up with the one set plan that's never going to change, never going to shift, never going to evolve. No, 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 no. It'll evolve. God will put new things in your life and you'll look up and go, "Oh, I didn't even know that was
Okay.
something I wanted,
Yeah.
but the evolution and the journey is part of the joy, but recognize that if you don't even have an idea, then you're just
Mhm.
wandering. And
Mm.
if you set out to drive somewhere and you're like, well, where are we going? I don't know. That's going to be a heck of a trip, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That would not end well. I love this. So, do you think that calling shifts and changes over time as well for individuals? Or do you think that that is more of an umbrella that covers over, it can like be lived out and worked out in lots of different ways?
So yes to both of those questions. And also
Great.
no to both of those questions. So let's back up a minute. So the first mistake that I think a lot of us make when we talk about calling is we equate calling with what we do for a living, and
Hmm.
calling is not what we do for a living. So we actually have two words in the English language. One is career, the other is vocation. We use them
Yeah.
interchangeably, but the truth is they mean two different things. So
Hmm.
career, the root word for that word comes from the word for cart. A career is
Okay.
like a cart. It gets you from point A to point B. So that's the job you do that you get paid to do.
Yeah.
On the other hand, a calling, the word vocation is what we really would use. And vocation comes from the same word as vocalization. It's vocal,
Okay.
vocale. It means to be called, to be spoken. So
Okay.
by definition, if there's a calling, there has to be a caller, right? There has to be something speaking. Of course, we're both people of faith. I believe that's God. Honestly, I don't care what name you give it. There's something in the universe that you have been wired, you have been designed, you have been created, you have been built, that is a direction that you are predisposed to go in. We call there's all these words, purpose, calling, they all kind of mean the same thing, and it's somewhat nebulous. And here's why. I think there is a calling that weaves throughout all the different roles that you have. It shows up in how you're a parent. It shows up in how you're a husband or a wife. It shows up in how you work. It shows up, by the way, how you work, no matter what career you have or don't have.
Mm-hmm.
It's the thread that runs throughout all of us. But I also don't think we ever really know what it is completely. Instead, it's
Mm-hmm.
a process of discovery and evolution, not because it's changing, but because we're changing.
Yeah.
And as we change and uncover more and peel back more layers, we get a clearer and clearer picture. I'm not going to say it never happens, but very seldom have I met somebody where, God comes down and shows them the picture and says, this is it. This is
Mm-hmm.
the picture. Instead, it's more like you're seeing a picture, but it's through fog, and then maybe this part becomes clear, and then that part clouds over and this part becomes clear, and you're kind of trying to assemble it as you go, and it changes over time. Not to mention other things come into your life and add to that picture. That could be a
Mm.
spouse, that could be a child. The number of people I've met that it's like all of a sudden they have a kid and it's like, whoa, their picture of what they want to be and how they want to act completely changes. It's like somebody flipped a
Yeah.
switch.
Yeah. So do you think if there's like a kind of a thread and like there's this picture maybe that God sees and he knows and we're trying to do our best to figure it out, or maybe it's like a snow globe and it's all shaken up and there's an image inside and things have got to settle before we can kind of see. Is there a danger as Christians that we end up making figuring that stuff out our goal,
Mhm.
and miss the moment of being where we are right now? And if so, how do we hold the two intention of still having goals and still like leaning in and towards the thing that God is like developing in us or growing in us versus just as you said, like sitting back and being complacent and kind of like, oh well, I'm
Yeah.
just here.
And again, that we're back to that contentment versus complacency kind of dichotomy. I actually I call it living in the both and, which is, I think as human beings, we like to put things into categories. We like to make things, it's either in or it's out. It's either
Hmm.
up or it's down. It's either left or it's right. It's black or
Yeah.
it's all of these sorts of dichotomies that we create. And I think God calls us to live in that tension of the both and, where it is both, this and that. If you think about the message of Jesus, so much of the message is really radical and countercultural, because he's almost saying, all of the stuff that you want to put in boxes, that those boxes don't exist. It's not even, I don't see those boxes.
Yeah.
That's not real. You're just making it real. You're creating the box. You're putting yourself in a box. Don't do that. The box isn't there. And so now that's simple to say out loud. It's hard to live into, because I don't think as human beings it comes naturally. And so it is that moment of stepping back and going, I don't see the picture completely. It's having the humility to say, I'm not the one that knows all the answers. I'm just the one that has questions,
Yes.
and I tell people all the time, it's like when they'll ask me about decisions, I'm like, that was above my pay grade. I don't get to make that decision. That one's God's. I'm not going to try to make that decision for God. The best day in my life was when I realized that there is a God, and it wasn't me. It's like, because so often we want to take on that role and that responsibility. It's like, that's not
Yeah.
yours. And it's okay that it's not yours. It's okay that you don't see the picture clearly. It's okay that your life is a film strip, not a photograph. Because here's the thing, no matter where you're at right now, the one thing I can tell you is it's going to change. If you're at the top of the mountain right now and everything is going perfectly, it's going to change. If you're at the bottom of a valley right now and you're really in the deep dark night of the soul and you're struggling, it's going to change.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where we are, and it's okay. That's it, because life is a journey. It's supposed to change. If it was
Yeah.
always the same, right, in a way, we're not needed. I
No.
mean, that's part of why we're called to be in relationship with each other. That's part of why we're supposed to be there, is so that when you're up on the mountain, part of your job on being on the mountain is to look around and lift other people up.
No.
And sometimes your job is to be in the valley and need to be lifted, and that's
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean that things are bad. It doesn't mean, it just is, and that's okay. And that's contentment. Now,
Yeah.
again, how do we do that? I don't have all the answers.
What?
It's something I struggle with too. And I think we all do, and I think we always will. But the only hope that I've ever found that works at all is to turn back and keep my eyes on, keep my eyes on Christ for me, and keep my eyes on God, and say, at the end of the day, I trust that He's got the whole picture. He knows where we're, it's kind of like it's a lot. Well, again, I'm back to planes. It's kind of like when you're a passenger in a plane. I really got to trust that the pilot knows what the heck he's doing. I
Absolutely.
don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
that guy could have graduated yesterday at the bottom of his class. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I have no control. I have to give up any sense of control and just go, I'm on this ride. And at the end of the day, land, crash, detour, whatever happens, because I'm not the one in control. I can't make that decision. And when we do that, when we can give up that control,
Mm.
now we've got some hope of finding contentment. And again,
Mhm.
does that mean you don't have goals? Because immediately then people flip to, oh, so then you don't want anything. It's like, no, you can have a goal, you can have a desire, but just be open to the fact that it may not happen. It's
Hold it with
okay if
open
it doesn't
hands.
happen. Hold
Yeah.
it with an open
Yeah.
hand. Exactly. And be able, because here's the thing about holding on to things with a closed fist. Yeah, things can't get out of your closed fist because you're holding on tight, but nothing can get in either.
Mm. You can't
And when you
receive.
hold it with an open hand, things flow,
Yeah.
and that's when you find the things that you look up and you're like, I never thought this was something I wanted. And this showed up
Yeah.
in my life. And it's like, wow, I was looking for this my whole life and I didn't even know it. That could
Mm.
be a person, that could be a thing, that could be an experience. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a million different things, a million different times a day. But it's those moments of paying attention to, yeah, this was the direction I thought I was supposed to go. This is what I felt called to. But you know what? God has put something new into my heart, and maybe it pivots, or maybe it changes, or maybe it shifts. That's not the same as chasing shiny objects, because shiny objects is just going after the dopamine hit, the
Yeah.
cool, it's new, so it's
You'll
exciting.
get a high and
Nope.
then you'll drop right back down again.
Yeah,
It won't
exactly.
last.
It's like
Yeah.
it's basically a drug addiction is really what it is. It's just a natural chemical in our brain
Yeah.
that causes us to have shiny object syndrome. So it is a weird tension of being in those moments of both and, as opposed to either or, because it's don't chase every new thing, but also be open to new experiences.
Yeah.
Have goals and be, and ideas and things that you want to do, but be open to them shifting and changing and new things coming into your life. Be,
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
what we would put as
Don't
opposites
make
are really
either
blended.
side your God. Like, don't
Hmm.
make either side the be all and end all. And I
Right.
think we can go too far one way and we miss out and we lose things, and likewise too far the other way. I would love to just take the last few moments of our time together to hear a little bit more about your book.
Sure.
Love the title, Inspired Living. Tell us where that came from, and also what a reader can expect to get if they were to pick up your book today.
Sure. So it is inspired living, and the subtitle is Assemble the Puzzle of Your Calling by Mastering Your Time, Your Talent, and Your Treasures. And that's kind of the book in a nutshell. So I wrote it for those people that are either saying, there's something on my heart, there's some direction I know I'm supposed to be going, but I kind of feel stuck. And I'm
Mm.
either saying I don't have time, or I'm saying I don't have money, and
Yep.
I don't have money. Let me qualify. Sometimes that I don't have money because I'm broke. Sometimes it's I don't have money because this other thing is providing so much. I can't possibly give that up and go chase this other
Yeah.
thing,
Can't walk away from that. You're
yeah,
like
golden
tied to
handcuffs,
it.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we call it golden handcuffs. It's
Mm.
the idea of, and by the way, I made that transition. I left a high six-figure senior executive position, climbed up the corporate ladder, and then went, and climbed back down the corporate ladder and went and started my own business.
Yeah.
And it's like, because it just wasn't. It,
You've
and
been
literally,
there.
people looked at me and said, "Dude, you're quitting a dream job. What are you doing?" And I'm
Mm.
like, "Yeah, but that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. It's okay,
Yeah.
and it'll be okay." And guess what? It's been okay. I've got. Is everything perfect? Oh Lord, no. But it's okay. This is
Mm.
more in alignment with my purpose and my passion and what I'm supposed to do. I find more joy in it. I give more joy to other people. It's the right thing. So
Yeah.
I left. When you think about that idea of coming back and looking at where you're at, and making those decisions to kind of move forward, it's interesting to think about how hard it is to do it. But at the end of the day, that's where we find contentment. And so I wrote the book with the idea that if you find yourself saying, I don't have time, I don't have money, what can you do? And here's what's weird or different. A lot of those kind of self-help how-to books, in my opinion, were written by somebody who's like, this worked for me, so now go do the thing that I
Do
did.
the same thing. Hmm.
Yeah, and it'll work for you. And the problem is it doesn't work for you unless you started in the
Probably
exact
not.
same spot and
Yeah.
had the same goal.
And if you're
It's like
kind of the same person and
if
wired
you're
the
the same
same way,
person
and
and wired the
yeah.
same and had the same childhood experiences, and so the odds of that working. So I took a different approach and tried to find what I call frameworks, because frameworks are things that work no matter what your specific situation is. You
Yeah.
can apply a framework to something, and the details are going to look different, but the broad arc is going to look the same. So, as an example, I look at self development and kind of going out and finding your calling. I talk about invest in yourself, invest in others. Naturally, as you invest in others, what happens is you develop influence. And when you develop your influence, you impact the world. So it's, kind of four little
Hmm.
buckets. That's an idea
Hmm.
of a framework. Or
Hmm.
earlier we talked about, make a plan, execute on a plan, make a plan, execute on a plan, review what happened, reflect on what happened, revise, repeat. That's That's a framework, right?
Yeah.
I can use that on a daily plan level. I can use that for a 5-year plan. It's still the same idea,
Yeah.
So I took the approach of trying to lay out frameworks that you can look at those components of time, talent, and treasures, do these exercises, apply them to your specific situation, and make progress towards answering some of those questions that we've been talking about today. Doesn't mean you'll have all the answers, doesn't mean it'll be perfect. You won't arrive at your destination, but you'll be further along if you do the exercises than if you don't.
Mm. Mm. That's great. What would be, if there's one thing that you think could really bless people to take away when they're thinking about contentment, calling, all the things that we've been talking about, what would be the one takeaway that you think would be a game changer for someone?
Don't take away your power of choice. And it's another language thing. So earlier I talked about taking I don't have time out of your vocabulary. Here's
Yeah, that's
another
a
thing that I
reminder,
don't like.
everybody, just in case you'd forgotten that and all the other things we're talking about. You're still not allowed to say
Not
it.
allowed to say it. You got to use it's not a priority for me instead because it'll
Um,
make you, it really will make you make different decisions. Here's another one. You're no longer allowed to say, I had to.
mm,
All too often, we make a decision and we say, I had to do that. No,
yeah.
you didn't. Because here's the truth. Even, and I'm going to make this really extreme on purpose, so don't freak out anyone. Imagine for a minute somebody put a gun to your head and said, you have to do something or else I'm going to shoot you. Is there anything in the world that they could say, you have to do this or I'm going to shoot you? And you would go, well, you're just going to have to shoot me. And the answer is there is. There are some things that if I was asked to do, if you were asked to do, you'd go, I'm sorry, I cannot do that. It's so antithetical to anything I believe, anything I am. My life is more, less important than that thing, whatever it is,
Mhm.
right? So, for me, hurting my wife or my child would be an example of that kind of moment. So here's the thing. If that's true, then even in that extreme of a situation, you have a choice.
Yeah.
You could say, you got to shoot me. So it's true in the little things too. So when you say, oh, I had to buy that new car. No, you didn't. You chose to buy a new car. And by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad choice. I'm not saying it's a good choice or a bad choice. I'm simply saying it's a choice.
Yeah.
And when you realize that, because here's the thing, when you say I had to, that's the same as saying I have no power.
Mhm.
I can't make a different, I couldn't do a different thing. I had to do this. So there's no other possibility. Really? That's taking away your own ability to choose. And God created us with free will. God created us with the
Yeah.
ability to choose. We can choose to listen or we can choose to ignore. We can choose to follow or we can choose not to follow. And it's kind of that same moment when you realize that then all of a sudden you open to the possibility of seeing other options. And sometimes that means you'll do something different. Other times it means, you know what? I've looked at all, this is it. This is what I choose to do. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's not what you chose is bad. It's that by saying I had to do it, you're taking away your ability to choose.
Mm. That's so good. Scott, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. If somebody wants to find out more about what you and your lovely wife are up to, or they want to find out about your book, where's the best place for them to head to online?
So I actually put together a landing page just for your listeners. So if you go over to my
Oh,
website, which is inspiredstewardship.com and then just /grow, what you'll find there is it's got a link to where you could buy a copy of my book. It's got some free resources, some of these exercises that we were talking about. If you want them in a written form, like the 5-year
amazing.
exercise and some of those things, you can download them there for free. There's information about my podcast. All of that is found over at inspiredstewardship.com /grow.
Amazing. And we will pop that link in the show notes as well. I just want to pray for you guys listening as a way of closing out this episode today. Father God, thank you so much that you know each and every person who is listening and that you have called them for good purposes, and that you are the one who promises to complete the good things that you start in their lives. And so I just pray, like all the stuff that we've talked about being content, about being able to live out of that place where we remember that you are the one sustaining all things and holding all things together, about remembering that we can have a priority. All of these things that we've chatted about, Lord God, help us to put them into practice. Help us to learn how to manage the lives that you've given us for your glory, for the good of others, so that we can experience the joy that you promise us. Thank you so much for Scott and his wife. We just pray that you'd bless them in their work, that you would continue to pour your favor out as they seek to release and encourage and uplift others. We just thank you for this time today. We pray that it will be a blessing to you, and that the fruit that will come from the seeds that have been planted will be kingdom fruit. We pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Scott, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a joy to chat and talk about all things calling and contentment and chickens.
I was going to say, when you finish the prayer, and here come the chickens.
And here come the chickens.
Thanks for listening in and hanging out with me today. If this encouraged you, why not share it with a friend? Or I would love it if you could take a second to rate and review. It really helps more people find the show so they can press in and move forward. And if you want to stay connected, you can find me on Instagram at HelloMTyler or over on Substack at mtyler.substack.com. I would so love to see you there. Until next time, let's keep growing and going.